Imagine you sitting on the edge of a cliff. The cliff is very high and you feel something. You feel anxiety. Why you feel that? No one is going to push you from behind. The real reason for your anxiety when you are on the edge of a cliff is not falling but jumping. Because whether you are continue to sitting or jumping off a cliff is in your hands. Knowing that your life is completely in your hands at that moment feels you anxious. This anxiety is a reaction to the fact that you are shouldering such a big responsibility. Welcome back. Today we are diving into a big question. What happens when freedom goes too far? It's easy to think that freedom just a good thing. But what if it comes with heavy cost? What if instead of feeling empowered, we end up feeling anxious and lost? In this video, we will explore how the quest for unlimited freedom can actually trap us and lead to emotional and mental chaos. We will look up some key thinkers who have reflected on this issue, including Erich Fromm, Jean-Paul Sartre, Fyodor Dostoyevsky, Isaiah Berlin, and of course Sigmund Freud. Erich Fromm, freedom as both gift and a burden. Let's start with Erich Fromm. In his book, Escape from Freedom, he talks about freedom being both a gift or burden. On one hand, freedom lets us shape our own lives, but on the other hand, it can be overwhelming. Fromm argues that comes from freedom, then try to escape it. Some might give up their freedom to an authority figure or lose themselves in a crown, avoiding the responsibility that freedom brings. In this way, freedom can actually make us feel more trapped, not less. Jean-Paul Sartre, freedom as a heavy responsibility. Now let's turn to Jean-Paul Sartre. In his famous works, Being and Nothingness, he makes a bold statement. Man is condemned to be free, because once thrown into the world, he was responsible for everything he does. Sartre believes that we are all completely free to make our choices, but with this freedom comes an immense weight responsibility. This freedom is liberating, but also terrifying. We can't escape the fact that everything we do is a result of our own choices. For Sartre, this burden of responsibility is source of anxiety and external dread. The question is, can we really handle this kind of freedom? Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Too much freedom can destroy us. Dostoyevsky offers a darker view in Brothers of Karamazov. In the famous Grand Inquisitor chapter, he suggests that if people were given total freedom, they would eventually destroy it themselves. This sounds pretty bleak, but Dostoyevsky's point is that humans, when faced with unlimited freedom, often can handle it. The fear and anxiety it brings might lead them to surrender their freedom in exchange for security or authority. It's as if the very thing that is supposed to set us free ends up suffocating us instead. Isaiah Berlin, The Limits of Freedom. Isaiah Berlin, in his essay Two Concepts of Liberty, offers another important perspective. He divides freedom into two types: negative freedom and positive freedom. Negative freedom means freedom from external interference, like being free from oppression or control. Positive freedom, on the other hand, means being free to fulfill your potential, to act in ways that align with your true selves. But here's the catch. Berlin wants that too much freedom, especially negative freedom, the freedom to do anything without limits, can actually undermine the very concept of freedom. One person's freedom to do whatever they want can interfere with someone else's freedom. So, unlimited freedom might not be all it's cracked up to be. Sigmund Freud, Freedom and Society's Needs for Limits. Sigmund Freud. In Civilizations and Its Discontents, Freud argues that civilization itself relies on restricting individuals' freedom. The idea is that if everyone acted on their every impulse, society would fall apart. For Freud, the control of individuals' desire for the survival of society. He suggests that too much freedom leads to chaos, both in individual's mind and in the society as a whole. In other words, freedom without limits can actually make us miserable. The price of freedom. The anxiety of extremes. So, what do all these thinkers tell us about freedom? At first glance, freedom seems like the ultimate goal and ideal to strive for. But as we have seen, it's not as simple as that. When we have too much freedom and no boundaries, this is important, the boundaries is very important for freedom, we might start to feel overwhelmed, anxious and lost. Freedom can feel like a heavyweight rather than source of joy. Fromm shows us that if we can't handle freedom, we might end up seeking escape, thought authority or conformity. Sartre's idea of existential freedom makes us realize that we are always responsible for our choice. Dostoyevsky's view is that too much freedom could lead us to destroy it. Berlin reminds us that freedom should be balanced. Too much freedom for one person can harm another. And Freud teaches us that society without limits would crumble under the weight of total freedom. Conclusion. So, what's the takeaway here? The freedom we long for can come at a cost. When we chase after extreme freedom without understanding its consequences, we may find ourselves trapped in anxiety, confusion, and chaos. The key is balance. Freedom isn't about being able to do whatever we want whenever we want. It's about understanding our responsibilities and respecting the freedoms of others. True freedom comes when we learn to navigate its complexities without losing ourselves in the process. Infinite freedom must be filtered through the lens of a virtue. When an individual willingly imposes their own limits, using their freedom in a morally responsible and a character-driven way.